Hello Fifth Form. I decided that I'd put together a few little revision videos based on possible extract questions from the Stories of Ourselves anthology. Today we're going to be looking at pages 98 to 99, and the question is going to be, how does Saki make the ending of Sredni Vashtar so effective or so disturbing? And in all these videos I'm essentially going to be talking through the text line by line. So I'll be giving you the information you need, which hopefully you should already have. It's up to you, however, to structure it in the way that you see fit. By this point in the story, Comrade's guardian, Mrs. de Ropp, has already got rid of his hen, the Houden hen, and so removed one of Comrade's outlets, his only chances for joy in his miserable life. So at the top of this page then, Saki is quite direct in his use of emotive language. He's reminding us of how miserable Comrade's life is. Remember, at the start of the story, he told us that Comrade is presumably very ill. He's got, I think it's 5 years, 5 years to live, and he has a fairly miserable life. And here, before the climax of the story, Saki needs to remind us in order to get our sympathies. So we've got the emotive language choking back a sob, and also the world he so hated. Quite simple vocabulary, but gets across how miserable his life is. Bitter litany as well. Next, in contrast, we see more of the interfering Mrs. de Ropp. "What are you keeping in that locked hut?" she asked. "I believe it's guinea pigs. I'll have them all cleared away." Cleared away, that's rather callous. It's a euphemism for killing them, basically, drowning them, so she doesn't really come across in the best light here. Comrade shut his lips tight, but the woman ransacked his bedroom, etc., etc. The woman. Okay, so have we seen this before? Yes, we have. Page 97, she is called the woman. Notice how this, I wouldn't say it dehumanises her, but it takes away her identity in a way. It emphasises how she is an antagonist, how she and Comrade are somehow permanently opposed. Okay, so yes, this has come before, of course. I was just flicking through, and yes, top of page 97. But in your extract, if something comes up that has come up before, then make that point. The examiner doesn't know that you already know it, so you need to tell them. Comrade didn't shut his lips tight, but the woman ransacked his bedroom, sense of violence perhaps, and forthwith marched down. So again, I think we've seen this before, but militaristic language. She's a woman on a mission. She sounds quite threatening. Now, Saki gets into Comrade's perspective. He saw the woman enter, and then he imagined her opening the door of the sacred hutch. Who thinks it's sacred? Comrade. Okay, so Saki is adopting Comrade's voice in order to give more of a sense of connection between him and us, the reader. Perhaps she would prod at the straw in her clumsy impatience, a rather dismissive reference to Mrs. Rupp here. And Comrade fervently, emotive language, breathed his prayer for the last time. And then, but he knew as he prayed that he did not believe. He knew that the woman would come out presently with that pursed smile he loathed so well on her face, and that, in an hour or two, the gardener would carry away his wonderful god, a god no longer, but a simple brown ferret in a hutch. And he knew that the woman would triumph always as she triumphed now, and that he would grow ever more faith, as it were. So what language is there here? Notice the repetition of he knew, he knew. So the sense of defeat here. This is, of course, preparing us for the sudden victory in the climax. He knew the woman would triumph always as she triumphed now. Again, language suggesting that in his mind, at least, Mrs. de Ropp is opposed to him, and somehow she enjoys her victories over him. They're permanently in conflict. And that he would grow ever more sickly under her pestering and domineering and superior wisdom. That's here. There's a sense that the sickness, his terminal illness, is a result of his confinement and his oppression. We saw this at the very start of the story on page 96. And nothing would matter much more with him, and the doctor would be proved right. The doctor is the one who has said that he has 5 years to live. Isn't that a terrible way of phrasing this? Nothing would matter much more with him. So the sense that he is just fading away, and the doctor would be proved right. So that's almost as if the doctor's going to be pleased when Conradin dies. Ah, yes, I was right after all. So the overall tone of this paragraph, then, is very dreary, very depressing. And in the sting and misery of his defeat, again emotive language, he began to chant loudly and defiantly the hymn of his threatened idol. Sredni Vashtar went forth. Hopefully you all remember how we chanted this in unison in class in 4th form. Oh, Sredni Vashtar. We haven't mentioned his name. Whoops, I've crossed it out. Never mind. That's better. Sredni Vashtar. Again, you'd have made this point if you'd written about the start of the story. Notice that this is fundamentally an un-English name. There's a sense of exoticism, mysticism. You can tell because in English you hardly ever get words beginning with SR. Now, I'm not going to attempt to guess which language this comes from, but we can say, the Indian subcontinent. So especially given the Edwardian context of this, this is a place of mystery, an exotic place. When we were doing our work on story writing, on narrative, we looked at chronology, the passage of time. Saki is doing something similar here, and the minutes were slipping by. They were long minutes, but they slipped by nonetheless. Watching the starlings, counting them again and again. So here, again from Comradin's perspective, we're getting a sense of tension here. And of course, hope had crept by inches into his heart. The very, very gradual revelation to Comradin that actually, for once, he has won. And then the ending of this paragraph. And presently his eyes were rewarded. Out through the doorway came a long yellow and brown beast with eyes ablink and dark wet stains around the fur of jaws and throat. So, in a sense, Saki is getting back to a more, I would say, realistic point of view, veering away from Comradin's voice, because that's what Sredni Vashtar is. He's a long, low, yellow and brown beast. He's a ferret with dark, wet stains around the fur of jaws and throat. So yes, basically he is stained with Mrs. de Ropp's blood. He's ripped her throat out or something. And juxtaposed with this potentially horrific scene of human death and destruction, we have the very pathetic with a B, in case my voice isn't coming through, very pathetic ending, very matter-of-fact in tone. Such was the passing of Sredni Vashtar. That's what happens. Okay, Saki being Saki. So the very ending of the story. Comradin fished a toasting fork out of the sideboard drawer and proceeded to toast himself a piece of bread. Toast himself. He's doing it for himself. So perhaps that's that's a symbol of his victory, a sense of independence from comrade. Previously, we'd seen that Mrs. de Ropp banned the practice of making toast because it gave trouble. As the book says, a deadly offence in the middle-class feminine eye. Okay, but now she's gone, he can make himself toast. And during the toasting of it, and the buttering of it with much butter, and the slow enjoyment of eating it, comrade listens to the noises and silences which fell in quick spasms beyond the dining room door. So essentially, he's just sitting there calmly eating his toast, while beyond the door all the servants react to the terrible, terrible scene of their mistress being found dead, ripped to pieces, bleeding heavily no doubt, on the floor of the garden shed. It's so wonderfully detached here. The list, the loud, foolish screaming of the maid, the answering chorus of wandering ejaculations in the kitchen region, the scuttering footsteps, etc., etc. Very concise, very detached. Very little emotive language. He's not done what we might do, change a sentence structure to be dramatic. It's just a very detached, very sustained list. And perhaps this is reflecting Conradin's lack of concern. "Whoever will break it to the poor child, I couldn't for the life of me," exclaimed the shrill voice. Okay, so we've got the contrast here between their reaction, and while they debated the matter among themselves, Conradin made himself another piece of toast. The end. So this leaves us, perhaps, with a bit of a dilemma on how to interpret the story. I think the way that we phrased the debate when we read this was Comradin, innocent victim of oppression or evil twisted devil child. It's up to you to decide how you interpret him. Remember, Saki being Saki, and we learned a lot about him and his style and his dark humour. He probably doesn't really want us to see either extreme. He's writing to entertain. Therefore, exactly how you interpret Comradin, Mrs. de Ropp, and indeed the story, is up to you.